So let's shift gears just a little bit and briefly talk about your job on the lake or with the trawlers ends. So now you need a job.
Well,
So
here's
you go to
what happened.
Marvin.
Yeah, at the end of August or in the middle of August, someplace I've been sending reports down to the state on a weekly basis. About the middle of August or so, I get a letter from him that says, "Doug, well, we have all the data we need now. You've successfully completed your assignment at the Lake of the Woods, and now you can come back down and work in the Centennial Office Building." And at that time, I loved the Lake of the Woods. I liked Warroad, and I was sitting in the Legion Club having a beer with Jack Marvin. He became a good buddy of mine. I was telling Jack, well, this is probably going to be my last week. We'll be in Warroad. And he says, oh, shit, why don't you come to work for us? He says, I'll talk to Brother Bill. So next day, he comes, he says, yep, go see Bill. So I walk into Bill, I think it was on a Monday morning or something like that, and I said, hi, I'm Doug Johnson. He says, yep, Jack told me all about you. He says, yep, you sit right here. Start tomorrow, and I sat right next to Bill Marvin for the first 15 years I worked there. We worked by their millwork office, the window office used to be behind the old hardware store. Back when there was a Marvin hardware store, and the lumber yard was that, and the marine shop was on this side. And then next to it was Page's Cafe, and Pauline Page, and we used to go there and shake for coffee every day. And the next was Johnson Chevrolet, and then Percy Stodgel Standard. And Percy Stodgel Standard blew up one night. And I don't know if you were here when that happened, but
I was.
yeah, but that blew up one night, and
Yep.
I was into that. And Cappy Carlson was across the street in the Mobile, and so I sat in the back, and when I started, there was me, Bill Lambie, Bill Marvin, and Morris Taylor with the complete office staff, and Kathy Fast and Elva Thiessen typed the orders and stuff.
Wow.
And we did whatever you had to do. I did whatever Bill Marder wanted me to do. I took orders on the phone, and I took plant tours. I did all the quotes. And they sent me a big blueprint for apartment buildings. I'd take all the windows off, and I'd figure out how much the windows cost and send them a quote. And I did all the expense accounts for the truck drivers and the salesmen and whatever else. I installed the first computer system they had. I installed the first automatic typing system they had. It's Frieden Flexer had what they call the TCPC, Tab Card Punch Control.
Oh.
And there was a little tab, a whole bunch of little holes punched in, and you'd put it in there, and everybody 28, 24 ARB 400, 4 9/16 jams, prime 2. And then it cost $32.47. And I did things like, one time I did the entire catalog. I revamped every price in the catalog. And then that went on for about 15 years. And then I ended up for a while, because I was going out to the plant, I'd take all the orders out to the plant, and then I'd go to the loading dock, and then we'd try to assemble all the orders into a truckload. And so for about 5 or 6 years, I was in charge of scheduling all the trucks, where I'd take all the orders we had for all the distributor orders and assemble them into truckloads that we'd manufacture. And they'd manufacture them in the order that I set up, because certain trucks had to leave on Monday, and the next truck had to leave on Tuesday, and the next truck had to leave on Wednesday, and so forth, depending on the distance that they had to go to get to where they were going to go. And depending if they had 1 stop or 2 stops or 3 stops, and we'd have to make a sequence of that. So they'd load them in that way. So they'd load the last stop in the front, and the second stop in the middle, and the last stop in the back. So, and then I did that, and you get about, and I developed what was called an opening count, which was sort of a measure of volume and cost. Like a double hung window was 5 openings. A casement was 5 openings. A basement unit was 2 openings. A barn sash was a half an opening. A storm sash was 1 opening. A combination door was 2 openings. And I used opening counts to figure out how many windows We'd go and on a 48-foot van, and we used two different sizes of vans, 48-footers for places where you couldn't go with 52-footers, which is putting her any place off the interstate, and then 52-footers that you go on the interstate. And you get about 2,000 openings in a 48-footer and about 2,200 openings in a 52-footer. And then I'd figure out all this, and then we'd sequence them in the manufacturing, and you'd develop. There were so many windows in the double hung department, and so many windows in the casement department, and so many windows in the stack and strip department, and so many things to do in this department, and so many things to do in that department, and then we'd put them all out on a big sheet of paper, and then we'd figure out what to do. And then if you'd see opportunities, then I'd call the customers. I'd move all the customers. So I'd say, hey, I've got a bunch of orders for casements for you, but they're newer ones than the ones for the old double hungs. Can I use some of them? I can get you an extra truck or two, you know. So I'd figure out how to do that, and then we'd make them all, and away we go.
Yeah. So you're at Marvin for how many years?
I was for 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah. In the last 10 years or so, I started working. Bill Marvin again says, "Hey, we need." In between times, we installed some IBM fancier computers. They had an IBM System 3, and I've been Phil Hepner, and was a head programmer there, and Dave Radcliffe and Julie Klinker. They were the people that were in the computer department.
Yeah. So in your last years, that's where you kind of worked.
The last years I ran it was called an MRP system, a Material Requirement Planning. Now it's called an ERP system, Enterprise Requirements Planning. And it dealt with bills of materials and inventory. You have to develop every window is made out of a whole bunch of different parts. You got stiles and rails and jambs and headers and sills and glass and hardware and whatnot. And I developed a bill of materials for every single window we made. And you could do a part explosion, and it would. Then I developed a forecasting system where I forecasted the number of trucks that were going to be shipped in the next month. And then I developed an average truckload, which is the average truckload of every different kind of window, what the average number of every size and every kind of window that went into the truck. And then I'd forecast the number of truckloads for the next, and then we'd do what I call a parts explosion. We'd take all those bills of materials and go down and say, and I would look at the inventory on hand, and I would say, you're going to run out of this part in 2 weeks, you're going to run out of this part. Next week, you go around to this part, and it would tell purchasing to purchase all this stuff. It would tell manufacturing to make all the little stiles and rails and whatnot. It went all the way down to the ponderosa pine boards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's amazing how all the working pieces,
And you also worked with, they always had routings that were attached to that. And it showed you the amount of time at every work center, how long it took to do that step, how long it took you to make a window sash, how long it took you to put the frame together, and how long it took you to make this. And then you could roll that together, and you'd put an hourly rate in every work center, and you could roll that together, and it showed you the cost of labor for every single window, and it showed you the cost of materials for every single window. And they still, and I went to a big trade show one time, manufacturing inventory trade, and I purchased a software called ISIM, and that was, probably 45 years ago, and they're still using it. They're still using it today.
Crazy.